Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying time is here. That's right, we're talking about 1984's Runaway on Kill by Kill. Well, greetings and salutations, Internet. It's your old pal Patrick Hamilton, coming to you once again from City, which is patrolled by police. This is the Kill by Kill podcast, where we're dedicated to celebrate the least discussed component of any horror film, the characters. And we're gonna unpack all the goriest of details of 1984's Runaway in the hopes that a cop's untimely end is just the beginning of the jokes we might make at their expense. And as always, there's only one person I trust that if I gotta get this missile bullet out of my shoulder, she'll do it and tell me to stop moving while she does. The one, the only, Gina Radcliffe. How are you doing today, Gina?
I'm sorry, you're going to lose that arm. I will do
Butterfingers?
I will do the best I can, but that thing's just blowing up.
Oh, that's going to be rough because I really need that thing to go because it won't affect me at all for the rest of our adventures. It was almost like it just grazed her shoulder or her arm. I don't really know how it got lodged there in the first place.
Yeah, that went right through the bone, and somehow she was fine, like the next scene.
Yeah, it's in the fatty tissue, of which she has zero because she's a dancer and she's the lithest creature on earth. But we'll get to that. I don't want to scare you, Gina, but we are not alone. That's right. We have a special guest. Now, you know him as a bit of a podcast legend, as it were, as one half of Jordan Jesse Go on the Max Fun Network. And of course, he's an author in his own right, whose latest are part of anthologies from Archie Comics, Pop's Chocolate Shop of Horrors, and the upcoming Chilling Adventures Camp Pickens one-shot, the one, the only, Jordan Morris. How are you doing today, Jordan?
Hey, gang. Good to be here to talk about this pile of robot crap.
Now,
Can a robot crap? Is that the next phase?
I mean, they can
Sure.
cook pasta, so, why not?
Oh, that's true.
yeah, I mean, they have
Grind
a
up
lot.
little caterpillars.
They do seem to have a lot of off-put. I mean, when you're filled with acid and you have to have oil in you to operate, wouldn't you have leavings at a certain point? I don't understand how these robots work necessarily.
Yeah, they seem more trouble than they're worth, honestly.
I mean, they're like filing. Most of them are like filing cabinets running around. They're not like
we're not looking at like the streamlined, sexy robots of the future. These all look like the Gonk robot from Return of the Jedi.
Exactly.
Yeah, all of these things make a Roomba look elegant. and yeah, I guess I hadn't really thought about that till now, but we are presented with this near future where, robots are a part of everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of good predicting by Michael Crichton.
Sure.
He gets a lot of stuff right.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we are never shown any robots being functional. I guess you have those first couple of crop robots in the beginning, like doing their thing. But like every robot you see in this is like fucking up, like, like the craziest version of Rosie from the Jetsons.
Like Rosie from the Jetsons when she takes that one elixir that makes her drunk. It's just,
right. Yes, exactly. I guess Rosie, for the most part, was pretty competent, but I think we did see her go haywire.
Yeah, every once in a while she plugged into the wrong outlet. I mean,
of course.
Listen,
Don't we all though, huh?
The weirdest thing about the Jetsons is that, and I can't remember the name of the comedian who dissected this, but based on the outline of when the Jetsons proper, those two meet, like George is well into his 20s and his wife is like maybe 16. It's super weird. Like it just does not make any rational sense of how they met. I don't care how in the future you are, like there should be some consent between two adults before they start having two children and a robot and a dog who, runs in space.
Well, I hate to be the one to say this, but George Jetson, you're canceled.
Finally got it.
Coming for you, Fred Flintstone. Look out,
next.
Top Cat. The woke mob is coming for Grape Ape.
Oh, if the woke mind virus has not overtaken Grape Ape at this point, what kind of world are we really living in?
Right.
Gen Z, get at her. So a bit of background here. First of all, Gina, you've been a large proponent of Runaway here on the show for a long time. Now, we take every year we try to take one regular genre movie, like an action film that has a ton of horror elements, and draft it into this. We've done the Commandos, the Cobras, as it were. And I was always trying to hold off on this because I thought we might do a string of them. But then finally we're like, we want to talk about Runaway. Let's talk about Runaway. Why do you want to talk about Runaway, Gina?
Well, honestly, it was suggested to me initially by a dear friend and a fan of the show, inspired by our coverage of Commando and Cobra. Where Runaway should be a part of that conversation, and I thought about it, and I'm like, yeah, actually, what, this would be a good fit because it's takes itself very seriously, but it's still very campy at the same time.
Sure.
You got the absolutely batshit element of Gene Simmons and what I think is his first acting role where he's not playing quote unquote Gene Simmons.
Correct.
I'm surprised it wasn't his last. I'm really surprised. If this was his first acting role, I'm surprised there were subsequent acting roles.
I think he essentially played the same
roles.
I think he essentially has played the same character over and over. Well, no, there was that one he did with John Stamos where he was supposed to be a trans woman.
Yeah.
Dear.
We shan't talk about that one.
No.
But, and I thought about it, I'm like, yeah, I think it would be a good fit. And I just, and it's not something that you hear other podcasts talk about, maybe for good reason, as it turns out.
Yeah.
But, I if you had said no, absolutely not, I wouldn't have been devastated. But I just thought it would be fun to throw in there.
Sure.
I will say this is not a good movie, but I think for the purpose of this podcast and for the purpose of putting on something when you're a little stoned, I think this movie is great. I think this is like a really to steal a phrase from the wonderful bad movie podcast, The Flophouse. I really think this is a good bad movie.
Yeah, totally.
And yeah, I was always kind of marveling at something incompetent that was happening, but I was always having fun. And yeah, there are some like little glimmers of coolness, little glimmers of like genius in here. Again, from Michael Crichton, my favorite childhood author. I can't believe I had never heard of this, but yeah, he definitely is a sci-fi genius, and it does have a lot of cool stuff, crammed into a movie where no one reacts to anything that's going on.
I think everyone was told to be so blasé towards the futuristic elements of this and the robots to view them as everyday, that some of the wilder elements of this motion picture are treated with the same indifference.
Yeah, no kidding.
Not to its benefit.
Yeah, I know. Like I understand that as like part of the vibe of the movie. Like, robots are part of your life. Don't act surprised by them. You're just a beat cop, out for a paycheck, Tom Selleck. But like, people just get stabbed in public and no one does anything. Like, and I get that like a robot is a normal recurrence, but if it's like zapping electricity and whirling around and exploding, like you would react to that. Anyway, no one in this movie does. But
this whole scene with Kirstie Alley in this office getting these mild but painful electrical shocks from a robot. And her and Tom Selleck are like flirting with each other while he's trying to disable this thing.
It is truly wild. Let's set up a bit of runway for Runaway. And that I think a lot of its status as an enduring film had to do with the fact that while it didn't do much at the box office at the time, it played on cable, things like TNT and AMC and whatnot, ad nauseum. It was an HBO favorite.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's how I discovered it. It's a Beastmaster syndrome.
Exactly. So Runaway was the second to last movie directed by blockbuster author and visibly upset audience member during a preview screening of Twister, Michael Crichton.
Did he not like Twister?
No, he didn't like my reaction to Twister. I was invited as a regular audience member to see a preview screening on the Warner Brothers lot.
Oh, wow.
He was seated in front of me, which meant I had to lean around him to see the screen because he was gigantic. And Twister is a fun and funny movie. And I don't think he had picked up on how funny it was until he heard me laughing through all 128 minutes of it, or however long it lasts. He did not like my reaction to it personally, is what I picked up from what he was putting down.
Cranky old Crichton.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. He was, as I mentioned, my favorite author as a kid. I was a dinosaur kid, so of course I had read Jurassic Park before the movie came out, and then took down Congo, the Andromeda Strain, Sphere, all these lesser Crichtons. But I don't really know anything about the man other than that, later in life, he became a climate change denier, which is really weird.
Yeah.
For a guy who I think had an actual science background, but for whatever reason, became a climate change denier. So when you said that thing about Twister, I'm like, oh, does he not is he just not a fan of weather or the idea that weather can be dangerous?
I don't think he liked what he felt was a very serious subject.
Okay. Maybe that was
being reacted to with not derisive laughter, but when flying cows are called out by one character, I'm going to laugh. I'm sorry. There are very funny performances in that film, but as he had a very established author period, and then he was able to draft scripts for one of his first books, The Andromeda Strain, and that sort of launched him into the ability to direct movies. His first film is Westworld in 1974, so that he's kind of that's his proto-Jurassic Park tale. And then he begins adapting other people's blockbuster work. Robin Cook, the creator of the medical thriller, he directs Coma, which is a pretty damn good thriller. All said.
I've only seen Westworld once, but I remember it being a cool movie. I was anticipating something better, seeing his name on it, because I just remembered Westworld. I'm hey, Westworld, that's a good movie. Yeah. But yeah, the the non-directing that goes on in this movie is pretty wild.
Yeah, it's weird what he wants to pay attention to and not pay attention to, because I would say if you haven't seen The Great Train Robbery, which he comes out the same year as Coma, so it's a wild year for him. But The Great Train Robbery is definitely his best directed work. He's working with, a real train. He's got Sean Connery, who's pushing back at him constantly during filming. And the things he's able to do with the camera in that film are pretty amazing, given the hurdles he has to jump over. Now, he takes those successes and he pours them into Looker, which is one of those early 80s films that demands you take Albert Finney seriously as a super hot dude that every woman needs to sleep with. This and Wolfen, back to back, seem to promote the idea every woman is just waiting for their opportunity to hop on top of Albert Finney. Doesn't matter which part. And then that goes over like a lead balloon. But he has this idea for Runaway, and they green light it. And he's like, this is great. Sci-fi's hot right now. I've got a great robot tale. There's nothing in front of me that's really going to interfere with the success of Runaway. And then in October of that year, a little film called The Terminator comes out. And kind of makes these robots look like dorks. It's just... It's hard to compare the little robo spiders to Arnold Schwarzenegger turning into a massive killing machine robot slowly but surely over the course of a 90-minute slasher film with guns. It's just, it pales in comparison.
But I don't know that like the Terminator needed to eat this movie's lunch as thoroughly as it did. Like, you know what has good looking robots?
Sure.
Star Wars. That, you know, that came out, 5-6 years before this? Like, these things are just so janky, and no effort has gone into making them like look cool. Or sound cool. Anytime anything makes a noise in this movie, it is so fucking annoying. Like there's not a lot of music in the movie. Like when some music kicks in, it's like, you know, it's just like someone said, do that John Carpenter music, but you know, like didn't understand the assignment. You know, just like kind of got drunk at 4 and wanted to shit it out by 6.
A cat walking across a Casio is how we like to put it on the show.
Yeah, it's exactly that, but like less elegant somehow. But yeah, like I'm getting off track here. We're talking about the robots, but yeah, they're just like, these things can look cool. Like that's possible. You can make a domestic robot that, you know, has a little personality. I guess the like maid robot that Tom Selleck has a little bit of, you know, personality. Maybe that's mostly the voice actor doing a pretty good job there. But like, yeah, I don't know. These things don't have to look or sound as bad as they do.
Yeah, they look like they're made out of scrap metal.
Sure. It looks like something like a Boy Scout makes for a regatta. Like they all have to like it's like a project they have to do for a badge. It looks like a kid made it out of stuff.
They're all designed to be so practical that the fantastical nature of their constantly surrounding everyone makes it seem dreary, as opposed to what it's competing against just in the Christmas box office season. So this is up against Beverly Hills Cop, John Carpenter's Starman, Breakin' 2 Electric Boogaloo, in which a person dances on a fucking ceiling, David Lynch's Dune, Night of the Comet, 2010, the year we made contact, the most inexplicable sequel to 2001, and yet it's a damn fine motion picture. And Terminator is still in the box office at this point in time. So when people were going to the movies to see something, it seemed a lot more dazzling to see these other films than Runaway, which kind of comes off as a bit dowdy. And it doesn't help that Crichton is kind of mystified by the special effects necessary for this film. The only area they seem to take a little care in is like the flying bullets. And you get like, that's like 2 scenes that you get them in. It also doesn't help that the flying bullets have to move so slowly, because it's obviously a guy running with a Steadicam, that people can outrun the flying.
But it is funny when you get like the bullets POV and you see like Tom Selleck seriously running and looking over his shoulder,
I mean, in the history of POV that we've seen on this particular podcast, Gina, we've had Jason staring out from the bushes and looking at a dog from his penis's POV. We've had Snake POV a couple different times.
We've had Wolf Vision.
We've had Wolf Vision on Wolfen. That was a big one. And of course, Predator Vision. The Bullet POV here, I would say, is one step away from just bursting into a Beastie Boys video.
Yeah, I didn't say it was like, spectacular. I just said it was, where the most care, went into the special effects.
It's the liveliest that this gets when it just, unbeknownst to the audience, it's like, wait a second. We got an Evil Dead 2 thing happening here. Hold on.
It reminded me of that in kind of a fun way. And like the actors like looking back and pretending like they're seeing a bullet, I guess, is a lot of fun.
Yes. it does look like they're looking back to see if Hank, the camera operator, is as close to them as he said they was going to be.
Right.
But even then, like the gun that they're launched out of it looks like, you know, like a price tag thing that you would use on like soup
Right.
cans. And it's like, there's like, where is the sleek, futuristic, you design these things are supposed to have that we were, promised back in like the 70s. Everything is just so clunky and ungainly. And it's like, this is not any kind of future I want to live in.
Everything, every future prop looks really bad. There's a moment early on where Tom Selleck has to go into a house with a crazy robot, and he puts on a special like bulletproof vest type thing that has a laser attached to it to like disable the robot, and it looks like Ren Fair chainmail with a laser tag gun attached. It just looks like someone from props is hot gluing things to other things. Like, I don't know. This I wonder how quickly this movie was shat out. Like the plot is so from a screenwriting book. Like we have a cop, he has a past, and he's afraid of one thing. It's heights, and that's his whole deal. Like, it really like hits those beats and just, comes in at 90 minutes. I wonder if this was like, crapped out when he was hot because he thought he could sell something else. And because, the we don't really care about this vibe is pretty prevalent throughout.
Yeah, it just, I think, well, let's get into the plot. I think we'll dissect where it fails and where it rises to the occasion along the way. So our first character that we really have to be concerned with is Sergeant Ramsey. He's played by the mustache owned by Tom Selleck. He's going with a buzz cut here, but his part can't stop. Like, his hair wants to have the part right in the middle, and no amount of buzz cut is really stopping it from artificially parting. Like Moses is going, come on, and it just starts to part right in the front. And we're not in this movie for 2 full minutes before he has a new partner named Thompson, played by all the blonde hair on top of dancer, actor, activist Cynthia Rhodes. Cynthia had come to prominence as a dancer on film in several projects, including the Saturday Night Fever sequel, which she is good dancer in that. And then in Flashdance, she's the secret dancer who's both on screen as her own character, and then she's also filling in for other people's dancers, dancer people in silhouette. Like, she's just that fucking good. So at this point, Hollywood's like, this person has been in one blockbuster movie and a Sylvester Stallone film in which he dresses like Kraven the Hunter. It's fucking wild how he shows up in that motion picture.
I think not a surprise. This, female character in an 80s action movie is about as underwritten a character as has ever existed.
At one point she tries to deliver like what her backstory is, and she's literally shushed. Like,
that's funny. I didn't catch that.
She's giving her stuff. She's like, I was a dancer, and then I hurt my knee, and then I tried to do this, and then you guys, there's more important plot happening, and we never learn anything else about her again.
I think we know that she used to work in traffic. I think that's a little joke that keeps coming up. She's like, well, this is more interesting than traffic. And I'm like, this is all about this person I know.
Yeah. As soon as she meets Sergeant Ramsey, she's got like the anime hard eyes.
Yeah.
Yep. Great new wave eye makeup on her too, by the way.
Yes. This movie is of a place and time. Sure. And that's one of the best things about it, that every other person in this is carrying a mountain's worth of hair on their head. The glass brick that appears behind people at various intervals. And it's so full of cop movie cliches. And one of the things that Crichton said, one of the very few things he said about it was, I just wanted to make a cliche cop movie, but insert this science fiction concept onto it and treat it like this is every day. And it's like, I guess mission accomplished, but
yeah, that is a weird.
It's a very
very
specific goal he had.
Yes. Maybe he was justifying it after the fact, but those were words that came out of his mouth.
And I will say that I do think she's good here. She's like really doing a lot with really doing a lot with a little, and yeah, I can totally see why Hollywood tried to make her a star. I do want to like see what else she's been in, because she is good here despite not having a lot.
Sadly, this is one of her last roles. She decides fuck this noise and gets out of the industry.
Well, she was there was still Dirty Dancing after this.
That's true. She does return for Dirty Dancing,
which is probably overall her most memorable role.
She's given something to do there. They work, these two policemen, they work for police in city, which is obviously they're trying to cover up for the fact that it's Vancouver, but why they didn't name it a city, I'll never know. It seems to have a wild geography.
We don't even seem to know. I don't think they even specify what year it's supposed to be.
No. According to Crichton, this is 1 year in the future. It doesn't matter when you see it. It's 1 year from that point.
All right.
So imagine that this movie is 2024, Gina. Sure. We're closer to it than we were in 1984. That's very sure.
The predictive stuff in this movie is like legit impressive. Like Crichton does call some things that like, look, it's okay. So these things are Roombas. He calls that. Yeah. There's like a Ring camera for a doorbell.
Yes. A VHS operated Ring camera, which I would love to get my hands on.
Oh yeah, sure. For that retro fiend in your life.
Exactly. Listen, only need to see people in 4:3. That's when you really get the best resolution.
Yeah. His kid, Tom Selleck's kid, is like watching cartoons on an iPad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of what Crichton's good at. He's good at, like, getting a sci-fi scenario that seems kind of plausible. I definitely remember, like, as a kid, like, thinking the science behind Jurassic Park was so sound. I was like, just do it. Just create the dinosaurs. He's telling you how in this book. Just go get the mosquitoes. They're in amber. So yeah, this is kind of his, like, superpower. And yeah, all that stuff is kind of fun to see. It's kind of fun to see the, like, 80s vision of the future that like kind of came true.
Yes. And for example, like this first sequence in which they're called on a runaway call, this is a bit like Emergency 51, where all of a sudden the bell rings and they got to roll. So they helicopter out to one of city's big cornfields, and
yeah, that's weird. They're very close to a cornfield. I guess they take a helicopter.
They are a mere helicopter ride away from a cornfield. And they have to terminate a rogue robot pest exterminator, a literal he who rolls behind the rows. And as soon as they land, the farm workers there are like, what are you doing? Why don't you just skedaddle in there? Well, fuck you. I don't skedaddle on command. Like, I'm a real professional here. I don't skedaddle just when you need me to. And so they go out into the cornfield. At one point, they find this robot, Thompson, Cynthia Rhodes' character, lifts it up above her head and somehow drops it, and it just rolls past her. I don't know how this thing is able to get away from them, but you think they were chasing a greased hog by the way they maneuver. And then they get to a certain point where they're over it. They look at each other and they go, 1, 2, 3, and leap up in the air and come down on it like they're in a fucking Looney Tunes cartoon.
Yeah, this is supposed to be like a comedy scene. They kind of try and play this for laughs. Right. Not Crichton's forte.
No.
Yeah, I kind of appreciated the attempt here. Yeah, and I think it's at some point they come up with like black soot over their eyes, like
yes.
They just did a cartoon chemistry experiment.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Like they got something from the Acme Corporation and it blew up in their face.
Bugs Bunny's lit a cigar.
Okay. I think he's lying at this point. But at some point in the movie, Gene Simmons tries to get in by saying he's from Acme Robot Repair.
Yes.
And I'm just like, gee, I know he's lying, but he would have thought about that for 2 more seconds than whoever wrote this, Michael Crichton. Like, yeah, the fact that he says Acme Robot Repair, it's like, come on, dude. Like,
yeah, it's again, Crichton said he didn't need to memorize the script. He was more interested with what he brought to the role. This so
boy,
he's freewheeling it here. You're getting
sucks.
Pure uncut Gene.
He looks the part. He looks like a scumbag, right? Like good casting in that regard. But like Ben Gazzara exists at this point. You know, Jack Palance is out there playing villains at this point. Sure. Like, I know not everybody's schedule lines up, and you know, clearly this was a kind of a quick and dirty shoot. But like, yeah, the fact that like Ricardo Montalban exists, and you get Gene Simmons to like just sleaze around in an unpleasant way. It's, I don't know. I
think the world had just seen them without makeup, because that's a couple years prior to this. And so the world has now become accustomed to the reality of what Gene's face actually looks like.
Oh no, he's ugly.
He looks so cool.
Put the cat makeup back on.
Yeah, like he was a samurai demon before this, and then he took it off, and you're like, oh, that's my friend's coke dealer. Oh, Jesus.
And he, like, in this scene where he's like talking into the door camera, I mean, he's doing a Kubrick stare at nothing. Like you're supposed to do that at people, not like, you know, just staring into a camera and looking down your nose at it.
His version of nonchalant gives the impression that he has not one, but several bodies in the trunk of his car.
Oh, yeah. He's definitely got someone tied up in the back seat that, you know, is trying frantically to get out while he's there.
Yeah. And we mentioned the score earlier. It really doesn't help that Jerry Goldsmith, who, has done amazing work, usually worked with full orchestras, here decides, I'm going to go.
Is this Jerry
electronic.
Goldsmith? Really?
This is Jerry
fucking Goldsmith.
No,
really? The music is noticeably terrible. What happened?
I don't know. It sounds like the Tron soundtrack became self-aware. He's going for something here, but it doesn't fit any of the action that takes place.
Oh my God. It does just seem like it's like, Jerry, you got an hour. We're shooting at 10. The music needs to play under the action for some reason.
Yeah.
Man, I think you really feel the Carpenter in this movie, like, and you know, probably how into him everyone was, but like, man, it's just such a bad imitation. Oh boy,
and the idea that what he does is so simple that you should be able to do it, because it's not, and no one's going to claim that Jerry Goldsmith doesn't know how to create an effective movie soundtrack. He obviously does, but it's one of those things that, you know, Carpenter fooled a lot of people into a lot of things. They looked at Halloween and go, wow, and then looks really, really simple. Sure. I should be able to do that.
And I guess that's probably the thing with his music too, because the music is really simple, you know, like, dun, 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 you know, but yeah, it is like genius simple.
Yes.
Yeah, very weird, very hard to imitate.
So their next call for Runaway is when Cynthia Rhodes gets hushed because there's been a 702 call. That 702 is police code in city for needing to poop. Oh, I'm sorry. That's a 1020. 702 is when a robot has killed a human. So, as we mentioned before, Crichton's very good at looking into the near future and saying, I think this is something that could very well be realized and make happen. And this is one of those moments where he absolutely gets it right. And that is, a drone is pushed into the action to
drones
gather information that otherwise a human being might put their body in danger for. And so this is, as far as I'm aware, the first real drone it's just something to keep it up in the air, and a camera is used in a motion picture as a prop. It's not a real drone. And as they're getting ready, Tom Selleck is putting on what you call it chainmail. It absolutely looks like, to me, it looks like shark bite armor that Australians put on when they're doing nature photography. so it doesn't allow the actual teeth to go into your body, but you still feel the pressure. Right. And then some motorbike pads are put on top of that. And he asks, how big is this robot? And someone says, it's about the size of a, turn of the century hat box. Oh, perfect description. We have robots, but we also know what hat box sizes are. This works
just
perfectly.
Next year, I know what a hat box is now, so I will probably know what a hat box is next year. Makes total sense. The movie's good. It makes sense.
Great. Not a trash can, not a filing cabinet, hat box. Work of genius. So before he goes in, Tom Selleck gets pointed to the father, and his wife and his daughter have been hacked to death by the robot inside the house. It has since acquired a gun. We will go into that gun a little bit later on. But he goes, hey, what do you know about this? Is that your gun? Did you modify this robot? And the dad freaks out. It's like, I don't want to be on camera.
No
There's
pictures.
There.
No pictures.
No pictures. No television. No pictures. No television. That was my biggest laugh. This is just such a weird performance from this guy, and such a weirdly staged moment. It's hard to describe. I can't describe why it was so funny, but yeah, dad is screaming, and we know why. We learn why later, because we know that, Gene Simmons is keeping tabs on him, but he screams, no pictures, no television, and just kind of runs off into the distance, and no one stops him. They just let him run away.
They let him run away. You should be able to do this. And the other weird thing that happens is the camera guy from the TV news studio leans into his microphone and goes, what was his problem? I don't know. Maybe he's got a dead wife and daughter.
Yeah, no kidding. I know.
And that's the basis for feelings. I don't know, man. It seems like he's going through something, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that this dude is super freaked out by what is happening in front of it. And everyone else is like, Jesus, this happens every Tuesday. Should it?
Yeah, I was going to say, did they need a code? Does robots killing humans happen so often that they need a code?
Apparently so.
Because that seems like
an entire unit with 3 people in it.
That seems like something they may want to address.
No, they send Tom Selleck and his mustache after these things, and we're all better for it. This is the first time we see the swooping bob of Gene Simmons as Dr. Luther. I'm still unsure as to what he's a doctor of. We later learn that he's got several convictions for armed robbery and murder, but what is he a doctor of? Like killing people?
A doctor. He's a Dr. Robotnik.
I guess so. If only he had a mustache, then that would be perfect for this. But Simmons' main move, both here in this scene and throughout the remainder of the film, is a disappointed in this froyo shop's service level of scowl.
Sometimes he bares his teeth.
Yes. When he bares his teeth, it's kind of like, I'm trying out a new tongue. Look at these choppers. Okay. Ramsey enters the house, and the camera guy from the TV studio just follows him in. Like, do they not cordon shit off anymore in the future? Why is a camera guy allowed to just wander into this dangerous situation? And then Tom Selleck's like, stop. Yeah. Go away. Just stop there. And the camera goes like, what? Guess what?
Yeah, as easy as his dad can just flee into the distance, into the night. The camera guy can just go into the crime scene. Yeah.
There's no police management of a crime scene whatsoever. And wouldn't you know it? Like, they're not in that fucking house for more than a minute. And that camera guy gets shot through the chest. When this happens, Tom Selleck crawls over to check if he's still alive, but somehow checks his pulse on top of his shoulder. Is there a place to check a person's pulse on top of their shoulder? Is that a physiology in the future that I'm unaware of? I was going to
say we're going to evolve very quickly.
Right. Now that we don't have to do these household tasks, We're going to develop new arteries and veins in our shoulders to compensate for the lack of physical work. So throughout this, now this robot has a gun. We hear this cocking noise whenever the robot is about to shoot. I might remind the audience, if you have not seen the film, and that's okay, that the robot is shooting a .357 revolver. This is not a gun one needs to cock necessarily to chamber around. It's not a shotgun, and yet that is how it is treated. Also, this robot doesn't appear to have a trigger finger, as it were. And so he's just operating this gun by force of electronic will, I suppose.
Yeah, again, this is just another case for things in this movie were just hot glued to other things, and that was as much thought as was put into the props.
I don't come to Runaway for realism necessarily, but the film seems to want to have a verite realism to it. So when the robot shoots a revolver 8 times and has a single arm, one has to wonder how the fuck it's cocking this gun you don't have to cock and reloading the chamber. How does this work? Is there another robot who simply loads the bullets in that we don't ever see? I don't know. Does it have one spindly arm that grabs bullets and puts it into the chamber like a scared drunk in an Old West movie? I don't know.
It does seem like this is the stuff that you would think that Crichton would be into, right? Like, How does this work? How does a robot get a gun? How does the robot shoot a gun? Like, I get that maybe this dude is not into like the performances or, giving the characters nuance, but it's like, I don't know, you're the sci-fi guy, you're the predictive sci-fi guy. Like, please, like put a little TLC into this stuff at least.
Yeah, I think he views a lot of the characters and actors and set pieces in this like plates to serve the technology, bouquet of ideas that he's trying to deliver to the audience. But you need to kind of think about those plates just a little bit, because if I'm not as entertained by the scene in which Tom Selleck rolls around on the ground a whole lot before he lasers a robot twice, and then lasers are only used one more time. These motherfuckers have laser guns, and they're like, leave that at home. I'm fighting robots a different way today. No, bring the laser gun with you.
Yeah, I know. The fact that he has that robot stopping laser in one scene and we don't understand why he doesn't have it in subsequent scenes where the robots are more of a problem. It is very weird.
Yeah, I'm just going to distract these bullets with heat.
Right. I'll rely on pipes, everyone. Old-fashioned pipes are the way I'll fight these robots, and I'll get it done in record time. He rescues a baby, and that's great, because it's an introduction to his own child, who's about 12 years old but acts like he's 6, named Bobby. Great
hotel robe on Bobby when we meet him. The kid's just cruising around in kind of like a velvet Hugh Hefner monogrammed robe. It's very weird.
Yeah. Well, this is the life he leads, though. He's got cartoons on an iPad. He's got a robot that makes him hot dogs whenever he wants, despite Tom Selleck saying, please don't exclusively feed my child hot dogs. The robot's like, that's the only thing Bobby will eat. I'm going to plug in now. Beep, 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 beep. Lois is out of the scene. There's a third member of the Runaway team. That's Marvin. He's the guy who looks through microscopes and delivers exposition of what he's found in microchips. Marvin discovers that the homicidal robot they faced the previous day has a non-standard chip installed that promptly explodes when you talk about it. So that's interesting technology.
So that's quite a fail-safe there.
Yeah. It senses when you're talking about it, kind of like a Twitter Blue subscriber with 6 followers, and then it just explodes by itself. And when it explodes, Myron goes, floor! And Tom Selleck just like gang tackles Cynthia Rhodes. But the camera guy makes sure that we see the pad on the floor that Selleck and Rhodes jump onto. Or they just always have pads on the floor at the Runaway headquarters. I'm not particularly sure.
And on Thursdays, they have gymnastics classes for children.
Yes, like my son's PE class. They're into doing human pyramids. And since there's 3 of them, you only need 1 pad. It's perfect. Now Ramsey gets called to a runaway situation at a construction site. And I think this is the 3rd time it's been mentioned that he's no fan of heights. So, of course, he just looks at this thing and is like, fuck this.
Yes, he's a character. He has characteristics.
Yes, he's got a mustache and he doesn't like heights.
Dead wife. So, that's a characteristic, I guess.
And he looks like Tom Selleck.
He's a mustachioed widow who doesn't like heights. I guess it's not even like they don't even like go through the like they don't even go through the motions of like explaining why he's afraid of heights. Like it's not even part of his character. Like, I don't know. My wife fell off a high thing. Like it's just like, I'm afraid of height. I don't know. It's this comes up so much.
He's always been afraid of heights. And there was one thing where he was afraid of heights and didn't follow somebody into it. And then that perp killed 6 people later that night.
Oh, really? So, I maybe missed that too. I'll apologize. It could be that I zoned out a couple of times.
But it's not something we see. It's not something he says in a confessional sort of way that reveals his character. It's something that Marvin tells Cynthia Rhodes offhandedly. Like, this is why he's not a regular cop anymore.
Okay.
As if he'll never have to deal with a robot in a tall building or have to helicopter anywhere. 2 times. We see both of these scenarios, and this isn't even the finale of the movie. We're only like a half an hour into this motherfucker. So good for us that Cynthia Rhodes will go up to the 18th floor and turn the switch on this robot that's dumping cement bags. And good news, the police force has forced her to wear a skirt for this particular gig, which I don't believe to be particularly practical.
No. Looks great on her, but maybe something where you have to climb a building or move faster than a jog. It's probably not great for.
Now that we know that these killer microchips are in play, this is when the plot proper begins. Luther has commissioned a whole bunch of these killer microchips to sell to the highest bidder from Johnson, the man whose almost entire family was killed the night before, and Harry, a character whose hair appears to be snap-on, like he bought it in a shop, and it just goes over the top of his dome. And so he goes to the place of business where they manufacture these microchips, and Harry says, I'm going to give you half of them, but I need to be paid before I give you the other half and the templates that you can use to manufacture as many as you want after that. And for some reason, Luther agrees to this deal, walks out, but of course, he's left behind a killer robo-spider. The robo-spider appears out of a towel. So did Luther bring the robo-spider inside of a towel? Was it in his breast pocket? Where was he keeping the spider before this?
I just jumped into his cart at Bed Bath & Beyond.
Well, what I think is funny is how like everybody is shocked when he turns around and rips them off. And it's like, look at him. Is that a trustworthy face?
Right. Is this the guy who's not going to give you one bill and the rest of it's cut newspaper? Of course he is. Of course he's going to leave a robo spider filled with
this
acid
guy's
for
like,
you.
What?
The robo spiders, I do have to like admire their commitment to killing their victims.
Yeah.
They are filled with acid. They do explode, but they also stab you in the neck.
Yes.
So I guess maybe the sequence is they jump on you, they stab you in the neck with a stabber that comes out of them. Then they start to drip acid and then they blow up. And sometimes they'll just like blow up anybody who's standing around too. So like, you respect the overkill. Like one of these things would kill you,
Yes.
But they also
you don't want to see a whole bunch.
But they also move very slowly. I feel like it would be very easy to leave the room that they're in.
No robot in this movie is ever threatening.
No.
There is some well done suspense later in the movie that we'll get to, but the robots aren't even really part of it. Yeah, the only scary things in this, the scary things in this movie is not the robots.
It's a big leap from like your coffee maker can kill you to Robo Spider filled with acid.
Yeah, I mean, you might be in danger of having a bag of cement dropped on you, but that's about it.
One high concept idea that I don't quite buy with this movie is that cops will get shot at and watch other suspicious people like reach for guns inside their coat, and they're like, listen, we're all tense. I'm not going to handcuff you. I'm not going to reach for my gun. I'm not going to just start shooting wildly like I know in real life police act. Here, it's very casual. So when Tom Selleck finally catches up to Thompson because he knows that these microchips are out there and that he works for the company that manufactured them, and some undercover cop has traced him to a local flea bag hotel. He goes up to the 4th floor. He opens the door. There's some sort of alarm on it, and Thompson shoots at him twice. And he's like, hey, I'm a police guy. And he's like, oh, sorry, oops.
Yeah, this is one of the more confusing, like, blasé moments in the movie. The fact that his reaction is to just start firing, and then Tom Selleck is just okay with it.
Yes, and he doesn't, like, he searches him, but he doesn't handcuff him. He's shot at you with a gun. That's, in my mind, that's time for handcuffs. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a big pro-police motherfucker, but I do think once the shooting at you begins, I'm fine with not shooting back, but probably securing him so they might not shoot again is a big one. Here, he's like, listen, you've had a rough night. And he just takes him downstairs. And Thompson's like, you can't take me outside. Bad things are going to happen. He's like, I'm going to put you in a fucking police car and we're going to leave. Lo and behold, they get outside and Gene Simmons is there. And instead of everyone pulling their guns and just shooting Gene Simmons because look at him, they're like, another day, another dollar. And Gene Simmons pulls out this whole ass pricing gun and shoots in a random direction. The bullet whizzes past them and comes back and explodes near them. Does Gene Simmons need to aim?
No, it's like a heat. It is a heat-seeking bullet, but also it's a heat-seeking bullet that knows what target it seems to want, which is
right.
That's two different things happening there because everybody emits heat. So if you are shooting a heat-seeking bullet, it would hit anybody, like just like a regular bullet would.
Or, I don't know, a heater that might be in the hotel room.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, that feels like they take a shot at explaining that at some point later in the movie. It's like, oh, he can like kind of hack into police computers maybe, so he has everybody's DNA on a but yeah, the fact that this bullet just seems to chase like main characters is pretty wacky.
Can we stop for a moment and talk about the when he logging into the employee files of various people, that because apparently a year into the future your employee file is going to have your acting headshot and mention your hobbies.
Right.
Yes.
I love that part.
Your hobbies, I know.
And like how old your child is. And it's like, that's a little intrusive.
Yeah, like why does the police force need to know how old his child is, or the fact that he likes soccer and football? That is not something your employer needs to know.
Right. And hobbies change. How often do you update those hobbies? Like I don't play a lot of Settlers of Catan now, but there was a time when I had a weekly game with some friends. But yeah, I would hate to look in my personal file and see Settlers of Catan on there as one of my main hobbies.
Yeah, when they look at the Thompson's file, he's like, well, this is just PR stuff. And I'm like, no, there's a lot of information there that you shouldn't just let the press know either. So it's variable. It's what the movie needs to communicate when it needs to communicate it. There's no consistency to it whatsoever. But getting back to this alleyway sequence, which does not take place in New York. New York does not have alleyways. It looks a lot like Los Angeles alleyways. It is neither of those things. These are pure, unadulterated Vancouver, British Columbia alleyways. So these magic bullets get after you. And like we mentioned before, it's very obviously a cameraman. The coolest part is when the bullet goes through a pipe. But of course, when it gets to the end of the pipe, there's a match cut that doesn't quite continue. The ideas are too big for the technology at the time, I think. And it just confounded Crichton as a director. And as a result, a lot of the frustration is left on screen. But he fires a bunch of these bullets. Eventually, Gene Simmons hits his target and it explodes his back. And he explodes in this shower of sparks. And he's just lying on the ground. And again, for whatever reason, Tom Selleck goes to check his pulse. And checks his pulse on his shoulder.
It's like he's afraid to touch them on their necks. It's too intimate or something.
If this revealed that what Tom Selleck's true fear was touching necks, that would be amazing. Like, listen, I'll do anything you want. I will jump on this elevator. I will round these corners. I will, get near sparks and explosions, but I'm not touching a neck. Fuck that noise. I don't care what the script asks for. Yeah, I don't know what the point of aiming this gun is. I don't know why Gene Simmons, I guess maybe if you aim it at a person, their heat signature is registered by the gun that is transferred to the bullet missile. And then the bullet missile knows which specific heat signature to go after. But also, if a person is running for their life, their heat signature is bound to go up. Like, I'll just say it. I haven't gone through it by myself, but sounds stressful. Also, Gina, because the bullet goes through a pipe and then hits the person it's aimed at, does that make this specific kill a get bunked?
I'm actually going to say no in this case. I do not think that bullets. I don't think qualify for get bunked.
Okay. Just so you know, Jordan, a get bunked is when someone is killed through something else. When we originally did Friday the 13th, people were killed through, even in the first movie, Kevin Bacon's killed through a mattress of his bed.
Very memorable kill.
Right. That's a get bunked. And so we were always on the lookout for it. We want it. We don't always get it.
You like a good bunking on the show.
Yeah. Oh, we surely do. This is when it's revealed the police have their own iPad with a physical 10 key, which is something I want. It's the one thing that's missing for my iPad is a physical 10 key, so I can feel like I'm back in the bank. When they go to the microchip manufacturer, we get a very underrated That Guy appearance by Michael Paul Chan. Who shows up in a whole bunch of movies in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. Then he was on television forever. And we'll reveal the other person that he was on a TV show with later. But this is really where we meet Jackie. Jackie is played by all the hair that Kirstie Alley ever had in the 1980s.
Oh, it's huge. It's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, if she could hang glide with the hair that's on top of her head.
Yeah, looking great. Always the 80s babe, Kirstie Alley. How long has it been since Star Trek here?
Ooh, well, she is in. Is she in 2 and 3? I believe.
I think she might be. Yeah.
Yes. So she was in Spock. The Search for Spock would be 83, I believe. So
she's maybe more known for sci-fi at this point.
Yes. I think she's known as a bodacious babe is my guess.
Sure.
Is that she's an actress on her rise, but I don't think she's been called upon to be particularly funny at this point because she's not on Cheers until a little bit later down the line. So she's more, you know, an actress that is can appear beautiful on screen, but yeah, probably seen more in the pages of Starlog than anywhere else.
And she's good here. You know, I think we talked about the, you know, blasé vibe that everybody has here, but you know, in this kind of opening scene or this intro scene, I guess, where she's kind of getting shocked by this security bot, she is like, you know, milking all the comedy one can milk out of this pretty dry utter. And so, yeah, I think she's bringing a kind of like, you know, necessary efforty presence that few others in the movie are.
We should definitely put milking the dry udder on the Blu-ray box when this makes the leap to 4K.
But you guys didn't watch this in 4K? Oh my God, you got to watch it again. So many little details.
So many details.
You can see the hot glue dripping off the recently glued Roombas. I guess they probably Roombas.
Michael Crichton is a visionary for sure. And you can see the arc of technology decades in advance. You know, he's a visionary in that way. But he's also the kind of man who believes that there are no two women can exist in the same space who aren't instantly jealous of one another. So for whatever reason, Tom Selleck is just asked to be instantly interested in Kirstie Alley, as he's also been asked to be instantly interested in Cynthia Rhodes. And why wouldn't he be? But why would Cynthia Rhodes or Kirstie Alley be in any way, shape, or form thrown by the other? I don't fucking know. But Michael Crichton is convinced that's what's happening. Tell me, does this sound like Sergeant Ramsay or any character Steve Carell has ever played? Quote, who is she? She's very attractive.
Right.
Yeah, like just in the middle of this like crisis situation, he's like, say,
hubba.
Is that
who's got the games over there?
Who's the babe?
I can't wait to get her in that machine that scans people for listening bugs.
And so he goes wagga wagga and his eyeballs go out of his eye sockets
Cynthia
like in a
Rhodes
fucking cartoon.
Cynthia Rhodes looking at him like, how dare.
Huh. When Cynthia Rhodes is in front of you and yet you deign to have attraction to Kirstie Alley in 1984, how dare. Like, what does either of this have to do with what you're fucking doing right now? But again, this is a movie that was filmed in 1984. If anyone is attractive on screen, they have to have the feeling like they might do it at any second. It just has to be there.
I feel like if Adrienne Barbeau was in this somehow, you would have a kind of an 80s babe hat trick.
Sure, yes. Oh, that would be great. If she was the captain, I think that would be great.
She would be great as the captain. Your fact about Crichton saying that he wanted the movie to be cliche is the most evident with that captain, with that, like, you know, I told you to do it by the book style captain.
And it's literally the guy from Police Academy.
Yes.
Oh, is it?
Literally, and then this is the same year as Police Academy. And yet, no, we never see the Blue Oyster. That's the only thing missing from this motion picture.
Oh, yes. Yeah, the Blue Oyster where men dance the tango in biker outfits.
I mean, that sounds like a hell of a fucking time. To be honest with
Sounds
you,
like a blast.
If I was told that there was a bar in town where men dance the tango, I'm like, well, do they have good drinks? Because that would be the trifecta. I was like, fucking yeah, let's go. Let's do this thing.
Yeah, that is a like in the world of like homophobic 80s jokes, like that one has aged pretty delightfully.
And so we learn that Jackie is actually working for Luther. She's on the payroll, or he has something over her, or he's just threatened her with death. That's all it really takes. But Jackie seasoned out. If she can tell these cops where Luther is at right that second, and they capture him or kill him, she's in the clear. And so that's exactly what she does. She points these cops to the Ritz Hotel. And so off they are to go to this hotel set. And
just another little bit of lazy naming in this. The Ritz. The first hotel name you would say.
There's an element to this movie that feels like everything is Ralph's brand, just that blue typeface on white. Everything is just brand name thing.
Right. Brought to you by Kroger.
Right.
Acme, the Ritz.
Yeah. Don't worry about the details. None of them are juicy or interesting. Just understand this is thing you understand.
Right.
Ritz Hotel. I got it. Thumbs up. So Tom Selleck runs over there, and they've got a backup of like 2 or 3 officers. It seems like a bad idea to go rushing in, but for whatever reason, they decide to do that. We get a bit of PG-13 nudity, which is rare. You never have PG-13 nudity anymore. Tom Selleck enters the scene. Luther's trying to sell this technology to unnamed goons, and instantly a gunfight breaks out, and Luther is able to kill almost everybody, injuring Cynthia Rhodes in the action, and escapes via helicopter. He almost kills Anne-Marie Martin, a name you might recognize. She was a very popular 80s and 90s actress, both on the big and small screen. And at the time, she was Michael Crichton's girlfriend, which is why she was cast as, quote unquote, hooker number 1. So
that's love, baby.
Not my designation, the film's. This is also where we meet G.W. Bailey, whose first line in the film is assholes. And he's the second closer / major crimes actor in this movie. He would be employed for more than a decade as a closer major crimes actor. So if you love your old TNT dramas, this film's for you, baby. Captain, as he's known. He has no other name. He's simply Captain. Says, I've had it up to here with your shit. And he's like, I don't know what to tell you. I'm after a killer. And that's as much tension as is put into this relationship. He's not taken off the beat. He doesn't say, put your badge on my desk and your gun. None of that. He's just like,
okay, but I'm very disappointed in you.
Like, next time, do better. Think harder. Okay?
Yeah. It does seem like that little scene is in there just right. I don't know, because Crichton thought it was funny, maybe. Is this supposed to be kind of spoofy in its own way? Like, that doesn't come across, but like maybe that's an explanation for why everything seems so by the numbers. I wonder if he like thought that this was going to have some sort of like spoof value to it.
I think because the fantastical elements of robots being every day is really the big sell here, that he didn't want to rock the boat in any other direction. So everyone else is playing a rote character, and he just figures that will placate the necessary components of this by the numbers police chase picture that just happens to have a bunch of robots in it.
And I guess maybe it's worth thinking about the fact that like this, you know, it's 1984 and maybe this thing isn't so cliche at this point. Like maybe it's a little less familiar. Maybe it's kind of a newer genre. You know, we're 10 years out from the last action hero,
right?
Where these things would get the spoofing they deserve.
Truly.
So maybe all this stuff is a little more audacious from where we're sitting. You know, here in 1 year away from the movie.
Right.
Always.
And a year from now will also be a year away
right.
from the movie. But if you're wondering, well, this is kind of an 80s action movie. Maybe there should be like a sex scene. Well, good news, everybody. As close as you'll get to it is a scene in which Tom Selleck removes a bullet from the arm of Cynthia Rhodes.
Right.
It does play like they're having sex. It's very weird. And it ends with an explosion and them in each other's arms. And it's like, I guess that's like sex. I mean, to me, of the age in which I was when this film came out, that was as close to sex as I'd ever gotten to. So sure, it worked for me then. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, there's just a lot of kinds of bullets in this movie. There's the laser gun, which fires laser bullets.
Sure.
There's regular guns, which can be fired by robots, even though they can't pull the triggers.
No, don't need to.
There's heat-seeking guns, and then there's this other gun that shoots things that explode, maybe. Like, they don't have to. They'll explode if you do surgery wrong or throw them into a stack of wine glasses.
They will explode.
Anyway, the future is just lousy with bullet types.
Of course, there's one other gun that you didn't get to, and that is, of course, Gene Simmons's love gun, which is implied but never seen.
Sure.
Now, it is after this sequence that Marvin, our man behind the microscope, discovers that these bullets follow specific heat signatures. And then Chief seems to have forgiven Ramsey for leading two men to their deaths after reading Luther's rap sheet, and decides that the best course of action is to get the quote-unquote department psychic involved. Now, when I say the monocle popped out of my eye, and this was
yeah, I did not remember that there was a single one scene involving a psychic.
But not like they've got laser guns and robot cars, but also they have a subsidized psychic on staff who will hold the bullet and go, "You knew this man. You were brothers once in life." Man, I'm trying to solve a fucking case with a guy with some heat-seeking bullets.
And I will maybe give this some credit and say, and maybe assume that it's going for the comedy that I thought it was. Like the idea that like the hero and the villain are intertwined in this Batman and Joker kind of way, and they just kind of brush it off. I guess that is pretty funny. I guess it, maybe it kind of goes with his partner trying to describe her backstory and getting shushed. This kind of idea of like, we don't care about this stuff. Like, just get on with it. Get to the exploding robots. I guess if they're going for that, there is a kind of a funny idea in there. I don't know if it works. And, there's so much bad comedy in this movie that it's hard to kind of assume that this stuff is intentionally funny, but like, I don't know. If I'm being generous, there's kind of a cool comedy idea in this.
Yeah. I mean, it just 60 minutes in, like I've seen robots, heat-seeking bullets, laser guns, self-driving cars, psychics on staff.
Right.
But then when Luther calls in and goes, "You can't trace me. I'm on a mobile phone." You're like, oh, hold on. Mobile phones still have to connect like through a signal. That signal can be traced. Are you telling me there's no internet in this robot society? Oh boy, I don't know.
Yeah, it seems to me that if they could trace the robots, they could trace a phone.
Yes. If you know where a robot is in their system, like, I don't know. Again, he can't solve every problem. He's got a really big idea. And this far into the future, it all seems a bit silly. But oh my God, just introducing a psychic and then dropping it all together is truly one of the most delicious moments we've ever encountered in this entire podcast history, Gina.
Yeah. I was like, wait, a psychic? What?
Come on. So they decide we've got to lure Luther out because we're not going to be able to trace him automatically. We've got to figure out why he wants Jackie.
Is this where he gets called a wiener head?
Yes.
Okay.
This is exactly.
I didn't want us to run past that.
No. I'm very glad you brought it up because it needs to be said that to the outside eye, to the non-police presence in his investigation, he does seem like a wiener head. And I will be honest with you, his plan sounds like something a wiener head would come up with, which is to take two cars, one of which is driven by a robot, and just see if Luther is able to find where they are and maybe try to kill them and let him get very close to killing them until Jackie reveals what she has that Luther wants. So that's exactly what they do. And it's at this point that we are introduced to killer RC cars. And this is years before their pure 80s apex of Clint Eastwood's The Deadpool.
Yes. Every once in a while, I'll think about that movie and I'll remember that Jim Carrey played Axl Rose in it.
It's in an Exorcist-styled music video. And, oh my God. Is that a stay tuned? Do you think, Gina? Can we get away with talking about the Deadpool?
Sure, why not?
It is certainly not the best of the Dirty Harry movies.
Absolutely
and it could
not.
legitimately be pointed to as the worst, but perhaps the most interesting as a result.
Yeah, I'd say add it to the list.
So yeah, Tom Selleck's big plan is that they're just going to lure Luther into killing them on a crowded road when he sends mobile bombs.
He's fine putting other people's lives at risk for this.
Oh yeah, no, he's like, hey man, this is the future. We're driving Mercury Topazes, the car of the future.
And these self-driving cars do have like chauffeur mannequins in the front.
Yes. Like, I think there's like one other movie I can think of off the top of my head that stars Arnold Schwarzenegger and he goes to Mars, where there are mannequins driving cars. So, and that's 2-3 years down the line from this. So it is wild that this film might have some influence. Oh my God. This is just, it's wild how ahead of the game this film is and behind the 8 ball narratively it is. But they go through this complicated thing where they put the public at risk on a fucking bridge by having all these robots explode. And you can see the other cars swerve out of the way. Like, it's not this is an invasive operation that they're doing. But they let one car go, it gets exploded, and Jackie's like, fine, I have the templates that he needs to make more microchips. And so Tom Selleck's like, well, I'll slip a bug into one of those templates and la-di-da, I'll find Luther. And so of all the fucking things that happened in this film, we are then presented with the most dangerous robot I think we encounter. One that makes sushi. There are many things that I've done in my life. All right. I have peed at a robotic urinal that went up and down and laughed at me while it happened.
Why did that happen?
I lived in Japan for a couple of years.
Okay.
There was a restaurant.
Any kind of toilet shenanigans can be explained with, and I lived in Japan for a few years.
They love a toilet shenanigan over there. And it was a clown-themed restaurant, and the urinal would, when you peed into it, would go up and down and laugh at you.
Okay.
And implicitly at your penis.
Kind of sounds like fun now that you describe it.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, I didn't take it personally. It laughs at everyone.
If you're aware, if you know that's what you're getting in for.
Yeah. No, listen, I heard this ahead of time. I'm like, let's get in a taxi. I didn't stop. I didn't say, no, that's not something I want to accomplish. I went there specifically to do it. So this robot makes sushi next to a different robot that serves other food. It's in the middle of a giant fountain. You would think this would be a big set piece, but what it really is that somehow Luther kidnaps Cynthia Rhodes while Tom Selleck has Kirstie Alley. And then they have to exchange hostages in a public spot. And so they do that. And then a cart gets brought out with dessert. And then there's a whole bunch of hubbub and they can't see what's going on. Kirstie Alley makes it all the way to Gene Simmons, who gives her a big old smooch and then knifes her in the back of the skull and dumps her in the fountain. And not a soul in this restaurant notices.
Yeah, no, she just falls right in, and they're just
throws her into a fountain. I mean, how big is this dessert cart? Is this dessert cart still obscuring her murder? I mean, how many dessert options does this place have?
I don't know. And like there are other people around who are not obscured by the dessert cart. So you would think like a guy stabbing somebody and dumping that body in the fountain would cause a ruckus or something like that.
We just don't want to get involved. You know, that's a thing with them.
Yeah. They should cut to someone saying, check, please. I feel like if one of the stated goals of this movie was to like be a vehicle for cliches, someone should have said check, please.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. It's the thing that's missing if Crichton had any sense of humor, but I don't believe that he does.
Yeah.
And as a result,
signs point to no. Signs point to not.
There's no evidence of it, and any comedy that happens seems to be purely unintentional. And as such, there's no ruckus really to be made until Gene Simmons starts firing that rocket gun at people and table centerpieces start exploding because, of course, there's a candle at every table. There's a slight flaw with these heat-seeking bullets in that any amount of heat will distract them from their target. But, okay. What are you going to do? Gene Simmons escapes in all the kerfluffle. He jumps down a couple fountains. He goes into a couple pine trees. You can still see him, but no one seems to notice that he's just inside the tree line, and he just looks at them angry. like a vamp. There's one scene where he hops down the fountain onto the next level, and he starts running. And he looks like a vampire doing an extreme obstacle course. And you're like, more of that, please.
I would like to see that. Have written down in my notes app, Gene Simmons runs like a dork.
He's not threatening while in motion.
Yeah.
When perfectly still, when he hits poses, I'm like, ooh, that guy's dangerous. When I see him moving, I'm like, ooh, that guy. He's been walking in tall boots for a really long time. He's really got some knee damage.
He seems like a kid who is running to tattle on you. Like, I feel like it just seems like he should be saying, Mom.
Yeah. So, of course, Luther knows that the templates have been bugged. He sticks it in a toilet paper dispenser at a hospital. Half the police force is there to intercept him, and of course he's not there. And so when Tom Selleck shows up, he's like, this is ridiculous. Just see if you can find any information from any environments here, DNA, whatever, do whatever you do, cyber CSI. And so he leaves, and as soon as he does, Sally, the iPad operator, gets attacked by a robo spider, injected with acid in the neck. And when the other cop in the bathroom with her arrives to see what's happening, they both get blown up by the spider. His pants are on fire. That's a real stunt, so I got to give it up. When I see somebody's pants are on fire, I feel the danger because that fire is approaching his wiener.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. There's some like practical stunts in this that are kind of cool. In that car chase, there is a moment where, Tom Selleck, but his stunt double like straddles two cars, does kind of a Van Damme split between two cars to jump from one to the other. Yeah. There's some like fun, practical, clearly a stunt double stunt work in this.
The tensile strength on his 501s are working overtime.
Yes.
Definitely. To approach that level of stretch. That is for sure. So meanwhile they're doing this, Luther has used this as a distractionary tactic because he went to a costume shop, picked up police uniform, and this is when he picks up all the information on the Runaway computer and learns that our hero, Ramsey, likes soccer and football. It's very important. And then in the background, you see that this is like a typical police station on top of it because there seems to be multiple sex workers just wandering about the precinct waiting to be booked. Like it's basically a Barney Miller type situation with robots.
But without the cool theme song.
Oh my God. That was on, like we were in some cabin and we didn't have internet access, for a reason. but I turned on the local, TV, and they were playing Barney Miller episodes back to back. And I'm like, no, I'm seated for the next 30 minutes. I'm hearing that theme song not once but twice, baby. Tom Selleck discovers that Luther knows where his kid is. Luther steals his kid, goes to that construction site because he knows Tom Selleck is afraid of heights because it's been talked about not once, not twice, but thrice. So it's going to end up in the finale. It's Chekhov's character development.
Chekhov's unfinished high rise.
Yes. And you said earlier on, Jordan, that one of the disappointing aspects of this is the sound design,
right?
Particularly the robots, and it's really made apparent here because all the girders and construction elements are filled with robots welding these iron girders. But whenever they move, they sound like a Coke machine with that robot arm that goes, "Oh, you want a Sprite?" and then it drops it in a slot. That's what it sounds like. It doesn't sound futuristic. It just sounds like a Coke machine that needs oil.
Yeah, I maybe I'm trying to give this movie a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. Like, is part of the message of this movie like robots shouldn't be trusted? So like, is that why
Sure.
they want them to like look and sound so janky? If they like looked cooler and sounded cooler, maybe we wouldn't get the message that robots bad. I don't know. Like I want this to be a choice. I really do, but like it just seems like it's lazy and sucks.
I just think he's like, they can't be too futuristic because it has to seem like it's happening tomorrow.
Sure. Yeah.
And so
they kind of have to look like Atari 2600s.
Right. They have to be somewhat practical. Like they're not hyper futuristic. They're just worker drones. So they don't have to look fancy. They look like they were built in a factory outside of Detroit. And that's an aesthetic. It's going for it.
And I guess that like, I did mention like these robots are no Star Wars robots, but I guess the robots in Star Wars do have like a jank to them. They're just like they have a little more personality and they sound cooler. But yeah, maybe that is kind of part of the Star Wars aesthetic too. Is like the stuff is kind of secondhand. This stuff is from another time, and people are fixing it up and reusing it. So I don't know. Maybe this is a little closer to Star Wars than I was giving it credit for, but. So I don't know. I'm trying to be more generous toward the movie.
Well, I think the advantage that Star Wars has is, of course, that all droids, no matter how they look, have an inherent personality to them in that universe. Whereas here, there's zero personality. Lois it has the personality of Teddy Ruxpin. Everything that she says sounds pre-recorded. It doesn't sound generated by a thinking machine necessarily. When you see it make pasta, you're like, how are they alive? There's no sane, rational being would make pasta like this, but it does. For whatever reason, when it's making hot dogs, it makes hot dogs in a glass coffee pot. Who the fuck does this?
In the future, a year, mark this down, Patrick. A year from today, you'll be making a hot dog in a coffee pot.
If I could sing, I would sing hot dog in a coffee pot to the tune of Girlfriend in a Coma. But I can't.
Beat doesn't quite scan.
Yeah. I'm no Morrissey. What can I tell you?
Hot dog in your coffee, I know. You don't get the pot in there, but.
Yeah. It still works, So, he's lured to this site. He's forced by the fact that his son has been captured. He's got to give up these plans. And for whatever reason, Luther seems rather okay with letting Bobby get onto an elevator down to the bottom. But of course, he reveals what his true terrible plan is. There's a bunch of acid-filled robots, spiders, at the bottom that'll kill anyone who gets off of it first. They'll let you get on, but they won't let you get off.
Very specific. So that is a very specific skill set that these spider robots have. They recognize when someone is getting on an elevator but not getting off.
Right. And meanwhile, they're like six legs and a vat full of acid and some explosive. But like, how do they determine who gets on and off? This is not for us to wonder about. This is not what we come to Runaway for.
No, you're right.
Not for this level of realism. So, of course, Selleck's got to do a bunch of tomfoolery to get in the way of that. He releases some steam. He evades some flying bullets. He manages to, get his kid to turn the power off to the elevator. But it's all for naught. It's a one-way trip. But luckily for us, his partner has disobeyed his direct orders and has shown up to save his son wearing, I kid you not, 4-inch red fuck me pumps.
Yeah, she's dressed for a date, which is like, why did she show up like this?
Like, you don't have one pair of sweatpants in your car? I'm guessing you do. Like put on some practical pants, for crying out loud. Stop showing up for work in a dress. This is not a dress level type of job. You got to figure that one out. But she manages to climb on top of this elevator with him and get him out of the way of the acid-filled robots. And Tom Selleck jumps onto an elevator on the other side, which, of course, Luther has rigged to go all the way up to the top and then tumble to the bottom. But he's also rigged it with a bunch of spider bots. And this sort of reflects basically now Crichton is playing his hits, because this is going back to the Andromeda strain, which has a long sequence in which, in order to turn off a self-destruct button, a scientist has to ascend this giant silo to get to the one security panel. And he's attacked by acid-filled robot guns, lasers that zap his face. It's like, okay, I've seen this movie and you wrote it.
I will say this, it does make sense that maybe this is a duplicate of something that he's done before, because it's easily the best scene in the movie. Like this scene of him trying to get off this elevator, to me, was so legitimately tense and well done. And maybe it comes from me having a little fear of heights myself, but like they really make you feel like you're up high and you could fall at any second. It's so well done. It really makes me mad at the rest of the movie. Like when I was watching it, I'm like, what the fuck? Like I don't know. There's some craft here. I don't know exactly what it is. I'm not film literate enough to like explain why I think this part is so much more effective than the rest of the movie, but it like really worked on me. It really worked on me as like a, suspense scene. And I guess it's because of what you said. Like, it's just kind of like something he does. He's done it before. It's he's going back. But yeah, I thought this was like the best bit of the movie.
I think it also helps that the robot spiders start doing things we've never seen them do.
Right.
Well, like here they go, oh, guess what? We jump now, motherfucker.
Right.
And they start jumping and they start spraying acid and they start doing things that they haven't done at any other point in the movie, because it's a tight space. You've got to make this work somehow. And I think because it's confined to a small space, much like the train fight in From Russia with Love, like you keep people in a very small space and they don't have anywhere else to go. It ramps up the tension, and I think he ups his game. You haven't seen the robots do these things before. Now they're starting to do these like they're learning or something, and it ramps up the tension level of the sequence. Where it falls apart slightly is in this final duel in which he finally starts to descend and Luther jumps on board the elevator, basically has him dead to rights, and does not kill him for reasons. Just, you've killed all my spider bots. Your child is relatively safe at the bottom of this. So I'm going to, I'm just going to hover over you and like menace you for a little while.
You know, a classic example of like the villains gloating, getting in the way of him winning. And this is a guy with like follow bullets. Like he doesn't have to be doing any of this. He could just like be across town and shoot the gun.
He could be sitting in his car like 5 blocks away.
Of course, yeah. Just definitely like this guy's evil. He likes to make a meal of it, and it's his undoing.
It very much so is. And then so they start descending. For whatever reason, they're descending faster than they were before. And Tom Selleck seems to wriggle his arm out from underneath him. And this causes Gene Simmons to tumble out of the elevator, which is not that far from the ground. So when he hits the ground, he's not so much any worse for wear. But of course, he has set himself up for his own doom, as he is now, quote unquote, the first person out of the elevator. And that's why all 6 of the robots at the bottom of the elevator inject him full of acid, but they don't explode yet.
Yeah, I noticed that. And again, it kind of goes back to these robots having kind of unclear power sets. You know, they're like a bunch of X-Men that they introduced in the 90s. It's like, what does this person do? And they shoot lasers? Okay. Yeah, it is kind of a like they all latch onto him. They all kind of acid him, or they all stab him and then acid him.
The stabbing things are full of acid. So when they stab him, they're injecting him with acid.
That makes more sense.
Sure.
The movie's good.
Who does? No one's lining up to get injected with acid.
The movie's good.
Sure. That's why his face isn't green, because the acid is interior. So it's aciding his insides rather than his outside. I don't fucking understand it. But of course, Tom Selleck has to make sure he's dead. He's unarmed at this point and just hovers over him. And of course, this wakes up Gene Simmons in a real ghost-faced moment.
And so Tom Selleck does not react in any way. He he doesn't jump away from him. He doesn't look scared. He just like, you done? All
right. We sure this is all you have? Okay, I'm going to slowly walk away from you while you get smoked like salmon behind me. No, I don't know why they explode so slowly for him. Like, oh, it's our master. Explode. Romantic.
I do like that Gene Simmons dies. They look of total exasperation on his face.
Like, I took off the makeup for this. And then the coup de grace is that at the end of this, Cynthia Rhodes is like, all right, I'll go to dinner with you, because this is a thing throughout Chekhov's dinner. And they're like, okay, it's fine that, we're coworkers and I'm a man and you're a woman. Partners go to dinner all the time. And then they kiss.
Before the kissing, there is a lot of nose touching by Selleck. He's like booping her nose and rubbing her nose in a very weird way. What is...
Well, he doesn't like necks, but he does like noses.
Okay.
I mean, that's the contradiction in him.
Yeah, boy, that is a strange little moment of him. Yeah, anyway, I guess it's supposed to be fun and playful, but yeah, they're near a dead body, and his son just had the most traumatic event of his entire life happen to him, and he's just kind of pushing her nose, bonking her on the sniffer.
Acid burns on his face.
Yeah, he does. She's like, he has giant open wounds. And he's like, boop, 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 boop.
It's like fucking Phantom of the Opera. It's like, now we make out. And she's like, you know what? Okay.
I think the last line of the movie is, he says, or the last little exchange is, he says, can you cook? And she says, try me. What the fuck does that mean? What is that?
In comparison to your fucking robot who grabs pasta and just lumbers it wet over a lit stove into marinara sauce. Yeah, anyone can cook compared to that. That's insane.
Is that the joke they're trying to make? Is like we need to get rid of robots. Robots are bad. We've decided. So you have to do the cooking. Is that what we're shooting for here?
I don't know. I mean, that's a I'll go with that idea because I can't imagine what the actual answer is. Maybe it is that. It's just so weirdly delivered that you have to sift through the many sands of subtext to finally get to it. It's weird.
Yeah, I was just like, I was racking my brain. I'm like, is this a callback to something? Again, I may have zoned out during portions of this movie. So I kind of blamed myself.
How is that possible?
Yeah, anyway. Who knows?
And so and it's not like they kiss and it freeze frames. They kiss for the entire credits.
They just do.
Slow credits going by. Jerry Goldsmith's worst effort blaring through speakers.
I can't believe it's him.
And they kiss for 4 full fucking minutes.
Yeah. This is kind of beautiful. This kind of end credits thing. You would, just imagine there would be a cut to black and, stark white credits. But like the fact that there is this kind of beautifully filmed slow motion kiss while sparks fly is like, I don't know. Yeah. It's this little moment of like, well, now you're putting in some effort. Like there are some moments where someone tried in this movie.
Well, there's nothing more romantic than kissing near the charred remains of a psychotic.
Right. Your traumatized child.
Acid flowing through what used to be his veins. It's just like what that must smell like. I can only imagine, but it doesn't in no conception of this does it spark. I'm so horny. I got to kiss for 4 minutes. I'll tell you that right now. And so that just about does it. But of course, before we go, we have to choose our own death venture. And that's where we decide of the many deaths portrayed in this motion picture. If we were forced to die in one of those ways, which one would we choose and why? Up for debate here, and you can choose from any of them, is slashed to death by robot. That happens to 2 different people. Shot by robot because he refused to listen to somebody. Injected with acid and then exploded. A mini missile explosion to the back. Shot by mini missile. That happens a bunch of times. Stabbed in the head at the base of the skull and just dumped in a public fountain and no one notices. Injected with acid. Blown up in a bathroom. Or fall inexplicably from an elevator, get injected with acid by multiple robot spiders and explode slowly. And Jordan, you're our guest. And so I've decided you go first.
Oh boy, this is a toughie. I don't know. I kind of want to, I do. Maybe I'll go get stabbed in the head and thrown in the fountain. Just because I did like the look of that restaurant.
Sure.
It's kind of a cool setup. It's outside. Maybe it's attached to a museum or something like that. Anyway,
maybe, yeah.
It's and I want to see what's on that dessert cart. I think in this death scenario, I've Gene Simmons has bought me a nice meal first, and
sure, you have at least gotten through a first course, a taster, and a amuse bouche,
right?
Who's to say? But you're gonna get a knife in the back of the neck, right through the whatever that very important part of your brain is back there, the stem. So you're not gonna feel much after that. I think you're gonna go into the sweet bye pretty fast. So you got that going for you. Gina, what say you?
Well, I'm really annoyed that being killed with a robot drops a bag of cement over on my head is not an option because nobody actually gets killed during that sequence. I guess I will take a hit in the back with a robot bullet.
Sure. I mean, you're going to have to run through a lot of alleyways.
Well, that won't take very long. I'm about to stop and take a rest, and the bullet will get me right away.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. And listen, that bullet isn't going to travel any faster than the cameraman can run. So you got that going for you. But eventually he'll catch up and you'll meet your grisly end. Of these things, none of them are particularly fun. Let's put it that way. I think maybe shot because I refuse to listen to a policeman, because I'd like to die refusing to listen to a police officer. I think that's the way to go. It's not uncommon.
History will be kind.
Even when you do listen to them, you can get shot anyways. It's a real fucking dire set of circumstances. And this movie doesn't prove otherwise, that's for sure. And whether or not I'm dead immediately or not, Tom Selleck will never know because he doesn't know where the pulse is located on an
All these people could just be alive. They could just need medical attention.
Very true. Oh, he is reported dead later on
in
a different news broadcast that the kid's listening to, because that's what this child does all day, because he doesn't have a parent. He just has a robot who makes hot dogs in a coffee pot. So what are you going to do? So that pretty much does it. Josh Hollis does all of our artwork. Revenge Body does all of our themes and remixes. Go to Revenge Body Memphis at bandcamp.com to get this theme and all the remixes ahead of this. But we want to know, Jordan, where can our audience find you on the in the great world wide web, and what you're doing right now?
As far as what I'm doing right now, something that your listenership might be particularly interested in. I've been writing some stories for Archie Horror. That's the gang you know and love from Riverdale. Archie, Jughead, Betty, and Veronica have their own spooky adventures that come out every month from Archie Horror. There's one on shelves now called Pop's Chocolate Shop of Horrors. That's 3 spooky stories set in the famous diner. And you can grab that now at your local comic book store. And June 21st, Camp Pickens drops. It's a camp slasher themed issue that I've got a story in. And you can put that on your pull list now. If you're not a regular comics reader and maybe don't know where your local comic book store is, feel free to get at me on Twitter. I will be your tech support for this at Jordan_Morris, Jordan David Morris on Instagram. Shoot me a DM. I'll help you find a copy. That's it for now. And hey, if you know who the gang is, you'll like these stories. No, you don't need any knowledge of 100+ years of Archie continuity. They're funny, they're spooky, and if you like horror, I think you'll like these a lot. Archie Horror, Pop's Chocolate Shop of Horrors, and Camp Pickens.
Yeah, I downloaded the chocolates, the Pop Shop of Horrors myself. Enjoy it very much. And of course, the weird thing about comics is that like pre-ordering, especially physical copies, has a lot to do with how they're perceived as a success.
Right.
So with the Chilling Adventures not coming out until June, if you can reach out to a comic book shop right now and reserve a copy, you'll be doing Jordan and everyone at Archie a tremendous favor.
Yes, thank you.
In that regard.
You said it, not me, but yes, from your lips to God's ears, pre-ordering your books and comics.
It's just the way of the comics world. That's just how it works. And of course, I can't recommend Jordan Jesse Go enough. Certainly Max Fun has meant the world to Gene and I, and it is the reason. Max Fun is the reason why Gene and I even know one another.
Oh, cool.
Is Max Fun.
That's awesome.
So it is very important to the genesis of this particular podcast. Gina, where can people find you on these here internet?
I write about television and movies at thespool.net. I have a Substack. It's GinaWatchesThings.substack.com. And I am on Twitter for however long it lasts, and Instagram, both under Gina Does Things.
Do it today, people. Check it out. Of course, you can find us on the various socials. Visit us over at Patreon, where we're doing fun things like talking over Friday the 13th movies. Our latest is Friday the 13th, A New Beginning, which is definitely a new beginning. And we talked for Animal Attacked April about a movie called Spasms, in which people are bitten by a giant snake and then blow up real good. It really doesn't make a lick of sense, but it does have Snake-O-Vision, which should make you want to listen to it. And of course, our 2 editions of Chat by Chat, where we just talk about stuff on and off the show. And that just about does it for us. But don't worry, folks. The body count will continue here at Kill by Kill. For myself, for Gina, and for Jordan. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.